Aditi is the president of Plymouth Balvihar, and I'll let her speak. Go ahead, Aditi.
Thank you, Dilipji. Namaste, everyone. My name is Aditi, and I am president of Bal Vihar, which is based out of Sanatan Mandir in San Bruno, California. And I have been president of Bal Vihar since January 2023. And before that, I have been teaching for like since 4 or 5 years in Bal Vihar, Hindi and culture. And so I was very intrigued and very interested when Dilipji came up with this topic, because I also think we need to talk more about it. So I will not take much time, and I will let all the speakers to continue this program, this meeting ahead. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Great. Yeah, my name is Dilip Amin, and I do a variety of activity. I'm a president of Hindu Speakers Bureau, and I have also written 3 books. One of them is Interfaith Marriages. Now, to all the youths, I told you some of them personally too, that I don't have any doubt about the kind of achievements you will make in your life, and that is beyond your imagination. But still, I have some doubt. So I don't have any doubt about your achievements in terms of financial successes, in your professional success, no doubt about it. But when it comes to your being proud, remain proud about Hinduism and also your ancestors, it's in some cases I have seen problems there, and that's why we have designed this seminar today. So it's something different we are trying to do. I've seen that many youths, once their parents, they did everything when they were in your own fold. When they go to college, somehow they take the U-turn. What I mean is that if you are Hindu, your parents told you you are Hindu or whatever it is, and then let's say you become an atheist, I don't believe in anything. That's not a U-turn. I mean, I understand that you may have a different stage of life, and that's not a problem. But many of them complete U-turn, meaning they become anti-Hindu, become anti of who we are, anti of our culture and heritage. And that's sometimes it's bothering, and why that may be going on. I don't have good answers for it, but what I believe that either it is its parents did not give any formal education, for example, like Balvihar we are running on, or did not teach about what is the truly Hinduism is. So that could be one reason. Second reason is, of course, the schools and colleges and media are portraying Hinduism in so many negative ways, and that may have influenced them to think that Hinduism is something wrong or something problems. And the third, and that is what we will focus on that today specifically, and that is in colleges there are specifically anti-Hindu groups there, and they are teaching you going against your parents and also your culture. And we want to be prepared for it. I mean, once you go to college, once you are on your own, yeah, you can decide your own direction. But it's at least good, be mindful that there are forces who will try to sway you away from it. And just to make a point, we want to show you a 2-minute video, and then the other speakers will take it over. Today, we have a very distinguished speakers for this session. And that is, first will be speaking Shobh Swami ji. She is a founder and one of the founder and board of director of KONA. We have Gaurav Rastogi. He is a dean of Hindu Community Institute, and a lot of he has, amazing career. And also Rutvij Hurre. See, he's only 17 years old, just got admitted to Stanford University, and even though he's so young, he has achieved so much in public life. So we are trying to bring you a variety of, and also the fourth will be Pushpita ji. She will join a little later on, and she is also board of directors. So we are bringing a lot of community leaders to give you something on it. So with that, let's start with this video, and then Shobh Swamiji will tell you more about it.
Everywhere South Asians go, particularly dominant caste Indian Hindus, they take caste. What is it that they do except, make scriptures that enslave our people?
I know that there are people who find meaning in books like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, but every act of Hindu scripture has done nothing but bring violence and pain. And
The Nazis aren't Germans in fucking Europe. They're actually upper caste Indians. It's really time to disrupt every single space where Hindu nationalists come into play. And every single person in the diaspora is culpable for the genocide that's happening right now in India, because upper caste networks in the United States help to fund the rise of Hindu nationalism. That we also have a structural responsibility as South Asians to really come for our fucking Hindu nationalist relatives. As they see on the line right here, is to come for your saffron auntie and uncle, because those people are not casual fascists. Caste networks have allowed a genocide to occur on their watch and have been reformist roadblocks to institutions of policing and violence.
The whole idea of Aryan race theory and swastika, in fact, they come from Hindu religious beliefs. So in this context, what you see is that the Hindu fascism and Nazism have a very interesting correlationship. Like celebration of Diwali is like asking an indigenous person to celebrate Columbus Day.
Namaste is actually part of a caste discrimination in India.
So you saw over here that she's talking about saffron aunts and aunties like me. So anybody who talks about Hinduism or something good about it, that's what she's talking all about it. And again, keep in mind that she's very strong. She has planned many meetings in universities, and you may come across her teachings. So, Shobhaji, you may want to take it and share your experiences and what you want to tell to youths.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you, Dilip ji. Thank you, Aditi. And it's an honor to be here to discuss this very important topic with each of you, especially the youth here who have joined. I really commend you and thank you for joining us. I just want to give you a brief 2-minute introduction about who I am. I am a Hindu mother who identifies as a Hindu. We are practicing Hindus, a great and grand tradition with all the festivals like Holi, Diwali, all of these at our home. And I have 2 grown-up daughters who love to enjoy and participate in all these festivities, as well as everything that Hindu Dharma stands for. For example, yoga. For example, ahimsa. So many good and nice things like, if you're stressed out, take a deep breath. That's part of pranayama. If you're a teenager and you're in high school and you're really focused on your exams and there's so many things coming at you with college prep and everything, take not only a couple of deep breaths, but learn a short form of meditation. All of this comes from our ancient Hindu Indic roots, and they are for the good of the entire humanity. We share it with all the people that we live in, with our different communities and everywhere else. But sometimes what happens, there are people outside, maybe external forces of people who have a specific narrative and an agenda that you may not understand as a young adult or a teenager or even younger person who's joining us today. But just understand that there are different people outside who will come in and tell you things about your own Hinduism. They may look like people like us, they may not look like people like us, So, and they may be having Hindu names as well, but they will start explaining to you a narrative about the Hindu identity. For example, they may tell you half truths and falsehoods, and it's and a narrative around that. So we want you to be watchful of that, because what exactly happened at our homes was, like I was mentioning, my daughters were rooted in dharma and rooted in all these fun principles, as well as the fun festivals that we all celebrate. But when they went to college, there were people who were telling them these things. What were they telling them? So these people were giving distorted narratives, and they're not from obscure sources, because sometimes they may ask you to Google something and look up sources like either BBC or NPR or the Washington Post or New York Times. And you will find that some of these narratives that they're telling you are true in all these, as well as Google search results, but they are falsehoods. And when they repeat this falsehood multiple times, they become true. Media, social media, newspapers, they pick up this narrative, and there are references everywhere. Then the false narrative becomes the main narrative. So we soon unconsciously start believing these narratives, and we start second guessing ourselves and begin to feel ashamed sometimes of our very own identity. Do I want to be identified as a Hindu? Do I want to identify as a Hindu myself, when we have so many things that I'm not so proud of? This is the kind of idea that we may get. And sometimes we may want to disassociate and disconnect from our own roots and our own identity. So example of some of these twisted narratives or wrong narratives are, for example, the swastika. There's a misconception that Hitler used the swastika, but actually Hitler used the word Hakenkreuz, which is the Nazi symbol of hatred, and it has caused great pain, suffering, and trauma to Jews, Romas, and indigenous communities. But our sacred swastika is the symbol of well-being and peace, and is used by dharmic communities and indigenous traditions. And that is not what Hitler used. Our research has shown that. We have booklets and we have education material available. So also moving on, about Ramayana and Ramji. My children were told that Ramji didn't treat Sita Ma very well, and hence we shouldn't be Hindu anymore, or we should stay away from celebrating Ramji's birthday and Ram Navami, and ideas like this were planted in my children's heads. What else? About the Mahabharata, certain things about Krishna Bhagwan also were told, that was, mentioned with regards to several allegations about Sri Krishna Bhagwan. And then they also unfairly attack Hindu festivals. And Pushpitaji is going to cover more of that in detail. But they just tell us that these festivals that we are celebrating are discriminatory, they are unfair, they are bigoted, they unduly utilize natural resources, for example, in Diwali or other cases. And then we don't care for the environment. So why would you want to be Hindu? This is what they tell you. Also, several public announcements are made and conferences are held to dismantle and break down Hinduism and Hindus themselves and their identity. And they, like you saw in the video, they're equating Hindus to Nazis, but this is really not true. We are a people who follow not only the principle of ahimsa paramo dharma, we call it, and under the auspices of following dharma, this is one of the main principles and tenets that we follow. Okay, we need to protect ourselves, but for the good of the greater community, we are here to cause least amount of harm. That's what ahimsa stands for, right? And we all know this. And what are the good things we have from Hinduism? That's what we need to, we already know about it, but we need to focus on that as well, as youth, adults, as well as parents. So I think it's coming up on 5 minutes now, and I will let the other speakers speak, and I'll be back in the Q&A session, and we can talk more if you have any questions or any specific questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dilipji.
Yep. It must be really hard as a mother you send your daughters to college, and then all of a sudden they start telling you something different. So I'm glad youths are here to hear firsthand, to learn something. Gauravji, you want to talk something about maybe caste system?
Thank you, Dilip Bhai, and namaskar and welcome everyone. I'll dive right in. There was a time when newly arrived Europeans into the land of the Americas asked the Native Americans if they owned the land. The natives didn't have any conception of owning Mother Earth, whereas the Europeans had very deeply entrenched and well understood property rights that they had established through their laws and their systems. So when they asked the question, do you own the land? The Native Americans said no. And so slowly, under the guise of property rights, the Europeans slowly moved away all the Native Americans from their lands under the threat of the gun and moved thousands of miles and relocated away from lands that they had lived on for thousands of years. It's important to know this, that it's very dangerous to answer questions that have been posed from a different cultural context. When someone comes from a different worldview and imposes their worldview on you, you have to think about the questions they're asking and the answers you're giving to them. Around the same time that the Europeans were asking Native Americans about whether they owned the land, their own society was highly stratified. And there was a heightened sense of racial purity. And that had led to inbreeding amongst their royalty. You can Google this, to be honest, to the point of sickness, because the royalty would essentially marry very close cousins in order to be racially pure. And this had gone on for generations, and you had deformed, demented monarchs because of this very strict focus on racial purity. These racial purity lines, these purity lines were projected onto India when the same Europeans began colonizing there. And what was the Portuguese word for purity became something we were told must have been in our culture as well. The word caste is a Portuguese word for purity, and it comes from the European context of racial purity. We did not have the caste system. Now, what we did have is a stratified society. Every society stratifies, and then they have to go through this churning process, and then the dominance hierarchies keep shifting up. Just the same way as you know, if you've read in geography or geology, the tectonic plates move up or down, right? And so what we did have in India were dominance hierarchies that varied from region to region and from time to time. I'm going to say this again. There were dominance hierarchies in India at the time the Europeans asked this question, but those are not uniform across the country or uniform over time. People go up and down based on, you know, what kind of trade is doing well, what economy is doing well, and so on and so forth. There were also purity and contact laws. This is very important for you to know. Every culture has their own purity and contact laws. If you're vegetarian, you don't like to eat with people that are non-vegetarian because there might be mingling of food, for example. Or during COVID time, you notice that people didn't want to touch each other. And so a tropical region that has plagues come and go every now and then eventually evolves this set of purity systems that says, all right, I'm going to sort of follow a certain set of practices. I'll bathe 3 times a day. I'll offer food to the gods, every time before I eat it. All of those are part of the cultural fabric that the Europeans landed into, right? Now, when the Europeans asked the question and we answered, the Indians answered, those were frozen into what's now known as the caste laws. This is a colonial curse that still hangs over India. And what you're seeing with SB 403 and other people that we just talked about is the extension of this curse into future generations outside the lands of India. Now, you have every right to be proud of your ancestors and your family customs. You did not choose the families you were born into. As you go to college, you need to know that your family may have its own proud history, your own proud history. Who are we? We are these people, these are our ancestors. You may have your own regional customs, how you eat food, when you eat food, what celebrations you participate in. And yes, your own unique set of prejudices that you will see and observe your parents showing, your relatives showing. These are not the caste system. Don't mix these things. These are simply what you have in every society that exists. People are prejudiced all the time. Young people often think, white people, Chinese people, everyone thinks their parents are prejudiced, right? That's just the way these things are. You also have memories of history. People remember if they're Irish or whatever, what have you. It's okay to have all of these things, and it's okay to raise an eyebrow and say, maybe I don't buy this or that. These are not the caste system. It has nothing to do with the caste system. That's how humans are. Hindus did not have, and I will repeat this a couple of times, Hindus did not have and do not have a caste system. The tradition in India, in the Hindu tradition, in the lands of India in general, are varna. Varna is your choice of profession. And jati, kula, which is the family of birth. These are traditional, and sometimes these mingle. I'll give you a few examples. If you're in the armed forces, then your choice of profession is you're a warrior. That's what you do. You're in the police. That's what you do. That's your choice of profession. You're a techie. What's your profession? You're a techie. That's your choice of profession. Your family of birth is who your people are, where you come from, what you've done. Now, you might see, for example, in the US, a lot of motels are owned by Patels. And that's because when you learn how to run a business or do a particular thing, you pass the knowledge to your children, and they find it more convenient to do the same trade that their parents did. And you would see that when George H.W. Bush, not the same guy as George W. Bush, two different people with similar names, father and son, both presidents of the United States, because the parents will follow that. And this intergenerational transfer of choice of profession sometimes happens in all cultures. In the Western culture, if you meet someone with these last names, Carpenter, Taylor, Thatcher, Goldsmith, Smith, these are not just last names, they denote, Google it, they denote the kind of work you did. You were a carpenter or a tailor, or you thatched roofs, or you were a goldsmith, or you were smithing metal. That was your family trade. So sometimes family trade and your choice of profession commingle. That's not uniquely part of the Hindu culture. So to sum up, European colonizers, even before the modern Europeans, all the way from Roman times, have had a tradition of using what's called divide and conquer, which is to find ways to divide any society that they want to conquer, and then use those internal divisions to rule over them. That's how the Europeans themselves were colonized by the Roman Empire, and they continued to practice that in other places they were colonizing. And so even now, the colonized subjects all around the world are suffering from the dire consequences of the damage these European policies have caused everywhere, not just in India. It's coming for you and future generations of Hindus because it's essentially a fossilization of a very dynamic system. The Hindu tradition is a very sophisticated ecosystems approach to retaining family memory, our culture, and knowledge. These are not social evils. Retaining memory of who your family and your people are is not a social evil. Your culture is something that you should be proud of, and that because it allows you to thrive, it allows you to enjoy life in a particular manner. The food that you eat, for example, and the knowledge is very hard to acquire, and transmitting it to your kids is some of the highest wealth you can transmit to your kids. So these are not social evils. What is a social evil, for example, is the European 1% ruling over the 99%. That is evil, and that is the caste system you should be concerned about, and you are well within your rights to rail against that, where people with intergenerational power are accumulating power and learning to dominate other people. That is not a fact of the Hindu society. Hindu society is a very fluid society. Dominance hierarchies changed all the time, and they have nothing to do with the Hindu tradition or our scripture or the functioning of our society. So with that, I wish you all the best. The Hindu tradition is one of the very few traditions that continues to retain memories over thousands of years. It is very important for you to know that this accumulated knowledge is your heritage. This is the wealth that you have inherited. You have to be proud of it. You have to put it to use to improving the state of the world, not just for yourself, but for every living being. With that, I thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all the best.
Busy life. I know you are still in the car and you took time out, so really appreciate it. So what Gaurav has summarized, that it's good to be proud of whoever you are. There is nothing wrong with what you are. But once you go to college, somebody will try to tell you that there is a major flaw with who you are, your ancestors, your parents. So at that time, just keep it in mind and you decide what is right for you at that time. With that, let me switch to our other young speaker, and probably that person is not too older than you. He's only 17 years old. As I said, Rutvij now just made into Stanford University. And he will tell you, Rutvij, can you tell them about what they will tell all about Diwali and Ramayana and Ram and Sita? Can you give little lights on that?
Sure, but before that, I want to add on just one thing.
Sure.
None of you have your cameras on, so I don't know the ages, I don't know the knowledge levels. So in case you have any questions as to, what a certain term I say means, feel free to interrupt, just ask what it means, I can clarify anything. But with that, this is a very important topic you brought up, Dilipji. Thank you so much for organizing this. And I think that, to talk about Ram and Sita is to talk about really one battle in an ongoing battle between feminism and religion, right? As many of you may know, feminism, which is a movement for, in the most basic terms, gender equality, is very much prevalent on college campuses. And as a result, they're trying to dismantle what they allege are systems of oppression against that oppressed woman. And, if you look, one of those, it's religion. And if you look at, religions like Christianity and Islam, I mean, you can see where they're coming from. But Hinduism, having a different set of values, does not necessarily fall prey to the same criticisms, and yet being a religion, as Gaurav explained, right? They view things from a Western lens. So being a religion, it is automatically subject to those same criticisms in the eyes of many Western feminists. And it is these same generalizations, actually, that relate to the story of Ram and Sita. For those of you that don't know, basically, long story short, after Sita was rescued by Ram from the house of Ravan, there were some allegations made by some washermen, I believe, that said that Sita, because she had stayed in the house of another man, could not be trusted to be loyal to him. And so there were doubts about Sita's purity of faith. And so Ram, as a result, ended up banishing Sita. Now, let's view the Ramayana for a second as not necessarily a story, where Ram's a god, Ravan's a demon, whatnot. Let's just view it as a simple historical tale. In that sense, let's not call Ram a king, because king is a uniquely European term, but let's call him a Raja. The reason I use these two terms is because in Europe, the king had a divine right. That meant that whatever the king did, because his power was given to him by God, it was absolute. The Indian king, on the other hand, his power was always given to him by the people, and quite literally. He was elected by two groups, the Sabha and Samiti, one of which was the intellectual society, one of which was the common man of society, and could be removed at any time if the Sabha and Samiti disagreed with his actions. So quite literally, the king was, simply put, a delegate of the people. And so when Ram took this action, he wasn't taking it because he had those views. He was taking it because he merely exercised the will of the people, as is the dharma of a Kshatriya king or Kshatriya Raja. Now, were these personal feeling towards Sita? Absolutely not. And to me, the most poignant evidence for this is the fact that in a society where kings could have, up to thousands of wives, Ram never remarried once. If he really had doubts about Sita's, faithfulness to him, he would have said, okay, Sita, get out of here, and he could have honestly found someone else. But he didn't. So what that tells me is that truly there was a bond between them, and he was exiling her not because he had any choice in the matter, but because he simply had to carry out the will of his subjects. Now, whether he's right or wrong, that's a discussion to have, and that's the beauty of Hindu Dharma, in that we don't believe that any of our Devis and Devatas or any of our leaders are infallible. It's not blasphemy if you question an action. And so there's a discussion to be had, and there's valid points on both ends, right? For one, fine, a king can, protect his family. But at the same time, kings putting their family above the needs of the public, I mean, that's what leads to so many crises of nepotism and leads to so many crises of corruption that we see in modern society today. So the biggest takeaway, I think, from this is, simply put, that this story should be viewed as a lens into the views of society at the time, that for any leader in society, the people come above all else. Dhanyawad, everyone. And definitely, if you have any questions on this, I can answer.
That's great. Thank you, Rutvij. You summarized it well. It's great that it's coming from some young person, very close to the other listeners. So I hope they can connect it more. Do we have Pushpita already joined? Pushpita, can you join? Okay. She's, as I said, she's on the board of director of Kona. And Pushpita, can you tell about the what equality lab teach this kids about Holi?
Yes, sorry, my timing was bad. I thought it was going to be a little earlier. So I think the other speakers have already touched on this a little bit. So I will just build on the facts. So, it's great that you guys got an introduction to equality labs. And many of you might think, certainly at your age, I was not, you guys are way ahead of me. At your age, I never thought much about the Gita and Upanishad and all of those things. But I certainly loved Holi and Diwali. I loved them then, I love them now. And I think in the current day, a lot of the transmission of knowledge and traditions and values and sort of community building that Gauravji talked about happens through our festivals. In living here in the West, our festivals have also become a means to sort of a very visible expression of our identity, because we go to our temples, we go to our bal vihars, but when do our non-Hindu neighbors most likely realize we are doing something special? It's when we come together and have the joyous explosion of colors in Holi, when they see our houses lit up for Diwali, months before Christmas, and everyone's puzzled as to what happened. Did Christmas come in October or November? So festivals have always been very important to Hindu Dharma, but they have become an even more important expression because of some of these circumstances in which they live. So I think, and hopefully you all enjoy them. So what is it when we talk about groups like Equality Labs? What do they do to deposition these traditions, right? On the face of it, it's really hard to make Holi and Diwali look bad. So they will work in a very subtle way to talk about what are some of the problems with the festival. So I don't know, Aditi, if you can share the slides I had sent you. But here is where I think folks like you make a real big difference. Because a lot of this propaganda and brainwashing succeeds because of apathy and ignorance. And certainly folks like us have to do a better job in making sure that the younger generation understands the tradition. But what I shared here was a quick snapshot of a Holi campaign we ran this year. And, we just wanted to educate people on Holi, not just about, it's a festival of colors, but also the fact that there is a lot of history, tradition, storytelling, rich community, links. It's not just very superficial, which is how most people tend to think of it. So, how many of you know that it's grounded in environmental traditions, for example? So how do we get to all of that? we get to all of, and when we did a little quiz based on this knowledge, I circled the results of the quiz. I was shocked at the results of the quiz because we had set it up as a very simple, like have the answers were all of the above, yet the average rate of response was 63 to 74%. Now, why is this? And mostly we are followed by people of Hindu origin. So why is this a problem? If you look at it, the immediate impact is cultural appropriation. I'm sure many of you are familiar with color runs. You know, the ignorance of our own community, of ourselves, to talk about these things leads to a place where other folks can actually appropriate our traditions and make a damn amount of money about it. Color runs are super expensive. They've gone global, and people will pay good money to do this and they never acknowledge where this tradition came from. So I think all of you are familiar with cultural appropriation, and I think we need to watch out that doesn't happen. But then there's a deeper layer of hurt. If you look at the next slide, and that's our famous equality labs again at work. And you can see what they say about Holi. Here they go a level further. They don't just appropriate our traditions, they actually say what appears on surface as a beautiful, joyous explosion of color is actually something deep and insidious. It's actually, Holika is not the celebration of victory over evil, it's the burning of a Bahujan female. Now, you can imagine if somebody knows nothing about Holi, and that unfortunately includes a lot of people who call themselves South Asian, this immediately starts to shock them and make them wonder what have they been part of. And this is how the seeds of doubt are sown in their mind, because they don't know who Holika is and why we celebrate the burning of Holika. So they immediately latch on to what seems to be more common in the social justice narrative, that an oppressed woman was burned, and here are some oppressive people celebrating the atrocity against her. And this is the start of the disconnection process that Shobhaji talked about earlier. And that is why it's so insidious. Many of you should be aware, the colleges, there are about 20, 30 of them. They have been running a campaign called Holi Against Hindutva for 3 years now. So this is a growing movement. Again, you can have your political views on Hindutva, India, whatever, but I highly object to co-opting a festival that is 2000 years old for modern political gain or modern political conflict. You typically won't see the festivals of any other tradition co-opted in political fights. And I think that is the right way to do it. You do not attack traditions, deities, and festivals for political fights, because, political ideologies come and go. But Holi is 2000 years old. There's also an article that Equality Labs published that sort of exemplified the visceral hate they are willing to indulge in when it comes to Hindu traditions. You guys can read it. There's actually a web art. They took the article down when we pointed it out as an example of pure Hindu hate, but it's still up there. And I pulled an excerpt from it where you can see that they literally make stuff up, because as a community, we either don't know or we are afraid to talk about ourselves. Hope all of you will blaze the path and do things differently. But here they actually attacked Holi as being a time when men attack women with rocks and semen. Now, I think of some of you might be familiar with the Jewish traditions. If not, go look up this concept of blood libel. It was something that was used in medieval Europe to really otherize Jewish communities. And this process happens over, decades and centuries. So it works slowly, but it works very effectively. And their festivals were marred with tales of, they bake their bread with the blood of Christian babies for festivals. So this is an old and hallowed way of otherizing a community, making them feel like less than human, so that when they come under attack, people don't really feel sorry for them, or they feel that they deserve it. Last slide, and I'll stop at that point. And if you think this is only about Holi, this is also happening to Diwali at an earlier stage. But you can see here an Instagram post that went up in 2021 from Other Collective. This is a massive student body organization funded by universities across many, many campuses. And before Diwali, they basically said that when Hindus get together in their own houses to celebrate, to pray to our gods, to burst firecrackers, eat sweets, all of these really innocuous positive activities are naturally oppressive to Muslims, Dalits, Bahujans, etc. Now, I don't know what you guys think of this post. When I looked at it, I was like, dude, if my existence is an oppression to you, then I'm sorry, you have to deal with yourself. I'm not changing myself. And I hope all of you will take that same take. That's it. Thank you.
Well, Pushpitaji, thank you. You summarized it really very well. I know you are driving and your busy life, so if you want to check out, that's great. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining. Okay, I guess we end the presentations. Like to hear from youths. What do you think? Have you heard about this kind of things? That what problems coming? Anybody wants to share your views? What do you think of whatever we said so far? Please.
I just had a question
Sure.
regarding why like equality labs and people are saying like Diwali is like I know Holi, like Pushpita Ji explained a little bit about Holi, but why specifically Diwali other than like between Ram and Sita, the common like I don't know falsehoods that like about regarding why Sita was banished. Other than that, are there any other particular reasons why people are like attacking Diwali?
Basically, equality labs doesn't see anything good in Hinduism. They just see everything is a casteist, and they will think of any reason to defame Hinduism or find problems with Hinduism. Maybe Sopaji, you want to add more to it?
Yeah.
I'll just jump in there really quickly.
Pushpita ji,
It's what I
yeah.
was saying. Yeah, I was just saying at the very beginning, I said, don't look for logic. They want to take something that is helping us get mainstream acceptance. And that's why I think Diwali and Holi were picked, because it's the most visible way of being Hindu in the West today. So there's no logic. If tomorrow, and think about the other visible ways of being Hindu, being vegetarian, like, yoga, vegetarianism, the list is long. But Holi and Diwali are, picked on because it's the one time you might invite a non-Hindu friend into your house. Your non-Hindu neighbors see, lights go up, crackers happen. You might invite them for sweets. People talk about it in schools. So anything that helps us gain, is not to sound conspiracy theorist, but when you see Hinduism as an enemy and something that needs to be demolished, you will work against anything that strengthens your enemy, quote unquote.
Pushpita ji said about Diwali, we heard earlier, we need to understand the caste system a little better as to what it is and what it stands for and what kind of a class and a social system it was and it is and it has morphed into due to several years of invasions and colonizations, and also, the different class of people. We need to understand that a little more, but that's what they're trying to do, is connect everything to that, to make us feel bad about our own Hindu dharma and Hindu festivals.
Any other questions, suggestions, opinion, thoughts from youths?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why do they relate Hinduism to Nazis?
It's a great question. We don't have anyone wants to take on that. Rutvij?
Yes, Pushpita. Yeah, go ahead, Rutvij.
So I think the Nazi kind of connection is, there's a rule, I think it starts with G, I think it's like Goebbels' law or something, which basically says that the longer discussion comes up, the greater the probability that Hitler and Nazis are brought in. Basically, because Nazis tend to be, the element of evil, right? Anyone that wants to refrain any group will just bring up Nazi. This is just like a general political rule at this point. It's not even related to Hinduism. But what we do find is that when Nazis are brought up, it tends to minimize the conflicts, the horrors that the Jews faced, right? Because basically what you're claiming is that you're saying that a group that committed genocide on 6 million people is somehow equivalent to a group that you have a mild political disagreement with, right? And whether we're in the right or wrong, that's a different thing. But there's no way you can compare us to a group that massacred 6 million people. And it's not only something that, we find, to be a false comparison, but it's something that the Jews find insulting, that these folks are using the real struggle that they faced to basically score a few cheap political points. And that's actually why we work with a lot of Jewish groups, like, Stand With Us, like the ADL, in order to be able to show that these folks that are attacking Hinduism are really just trying to not only, attack a group that they consider an enemy for no reason, but also denigrating Jews and denigrating multiple other religious groups while doing so.
Great question, Vishnu. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Any other thought?
I have a question. Why are they attacking Hinduism specifically?
Hinduism, basically, if I can take this one, Khushi, do you know about the difference between Abrahamic and Dharmic traditions?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the brief basis of a mini lecture that my one of my gurus gave me. So you can basically split most religions in the world into two kind of categories. On one end, you have Abrahamic religions, which are kind of layered like a cake, right? Basically, they believe there's one God, and he's been released to a series of prophets, and then they all disagree on who's a prophet, who's not a prophet, and whatnot, right? Then after that, you have the Dharmic religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, that generally tend to believe that the world is one, that there are multiple paths to be able to read the same truth, and just have slightly different focuses. The Abrahamic and Dharmic traditions have completely different values in that sense. In terms of, the Abrahamic traditions, for example, believe in a heaven and a hell, right? They believe in a concept of good and evil, something that doesn't exist in Hinduism. And so because of that, just like, you, for example, may feel more comfortable with a Jain, right? Even though they're technically not of the same faith as you, then you might be a Christian just because you and Jain probably have similar values, similar upbringing. Christians, Muslims tend to be, despite all their fights, tend to feel a bit more comfortable with each other because they think that they all share the same value, they all believe in the same God. And Hinduism, especially in a country like America, where, it's a majority Abrahamic country, is viewed as the other, right? It's viewed as a religion with completely different values, a demonic religion, the idol worshippers, that they may call it. And so Hinduism is kind of public enemy number one that's targeted. But alongside Hinduism, it's also Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, Taoism, the Native American faiths. Basically, anything that doesn't fit in with the Abrahamic worldview is targeted. And Hinduism is just, probably the largest surviving group that's, survived the Abrahamic onslaught.
We want to clarify that we are not here to say that all the Christians, Jews, Muslims, these Abrahamics are that way. Nor it's not that when you go to college, everybody will be talking negative about Hinduism. But what we are saying that there will be some people who will be telling you negative about Hinduism. And at that time, you just use your own judgment that whether you want to believe them or not, and do thorough search, maybe talk to your parents that this is what you are learning. It's always good to be proud of who you are. And if you are not proud of who you are, there will be always all kind of animals. Some druggists will make you start all kind of wrong drugs, or some will take you to some gang and gunning people down. So important point we are trying to tell here is to be proud of who you are. If somebody is trying to sway away from it, from what you believe in, just do listen to them and evaluate properly. And you are smart people. Make your own judgment. On the time point, it's 10 o'clock, so we can end the session. But at the same token, so whoever wants to leave can leave. But those who have any other questions, any of the other youths, please speak and we will be here to help. Please. Next question.
I have one question. I can see that Rutvij is so young, but he has a very deep understanding of Hinduism. I want to know how he has such a deep understanding of Hinduism, because it can help other parents to, because what generally parents do, even we, tend to follow the customs, the traditions, and we explain the same to our kids. But even I thought that there should be some deep understanding, explain to the kids why this tradition, why this custom we follow in Hinduism, what is the actual reason or the meaning behind this tradition and custom. So I just want to know how Ritvij developed this deep understanding. If he can share something.
Before Rutvij go on, let me tell you that when he applied for colleges, he was asking us that how he should strategize this. And some people suggested him that you are so proud Hindu, don't bring up because college will turn you down. And he says nothing doing. He's going to tell what he is, and that's it. And he made it to Stanford. So Rutvij, go ahead.
That part is at least true. I had a lot of people tell me that, my own parents especially were like, oh, why are you spending time in politics? Politics is dirty, go into like computer science or something that way you can get into Stanford or whatnot, right? My entire application actually was fully Hindu. You look at, for those of you, some of you seem a bit young, so you may not know the process. The common application has like 10 activity slots, right? Where you can put extracurricular activities. I think all 10 of those were Hindu. It was like HAF, Kona, Hindu Education Foundation, VHP, whatever, right? And so, yeah, Hinduism has definitely been a very big part of my life. For me, as the parents here, it really does come down to, I'd say, I had a very good guru. His name, for some of you might know him, his name was Neeraj Mohanka. And he used to teach the small little religion classes, just once a month. And the way we viewed Hinduism was not, we didn't teach it again, right? I mentioned division between like Abrahamics and Dharmics. We didn't view it through an Abrahamic lens of, oh, okay, Ram's God, Krishna's God, here's the stories of the gods or whatever, right? It was more about the philosophical underpinnings of Hinduism. And so, what happened is he basically explained, look, the fundamental Hindu worldview is that reaching God is like a mountain. You can take multiple paths up. You can take a bike up, you can take a plane up, you can walk up. And are all these paths the same? No, obviously, if you take a plane up, you'll get there fast. If you walk more, you can enjoy the scenery. But at the end of the day, all of them do lead to the same one goal that we're trying to reach. Explaining things like that in such, simple terms, I saw 6-year-old kids. I'm gonna be meeting with one of them at 2 actually today, just catch up on old times. But I saw 6-year-old kids being able to explain Hindu Dharma better than 99% of other people do. That's the real kind of thing behind it. So I'll make an offer out there to anyone who wants it, right? If you want if you just want more information on like the basics of Hindu Dharma, if you want more information on these philosophical underpinnings, if you want more information on just for life in general, let me know. I'm definitely willing to, kind of teach the same stuff that I was taught. If you want, Aditi, I can come into a Balviars and explain the same manner. And I'll, mention the kind of benefit of this. So I was on the Stanford campus, and it's very funny. There's actually a very large Catholic community on there. So I walk in, the first conversation I have is with this one kid, Indian actually, who tried to convert me to Catholicism. It doesn't end well for him, just because one thing he realizes, he's like, oh, what evidence do you have for Ram or Krishna existing? I'm like, there's some, you have the Ram, Satan, everything, but it doesn't matter to me. Tomorrow, if we find out Ram doesn't exist, Krishna doesn't exist, Vishnu doesn't exist, whatever, I'll still be a Hindu. Simply because there's more fundamental scientific underpinnings to Hinduism that are much more central than any Devi or Devata can ever be, right? The idea that everything is one, the idea that, to put it in Western scientific terms, that we're all made out of the same protons, the same neutrons, the same electrons, and have that same oneness within us. That's something that is incredibly hard to dispute. Gods and theology you can argue about all day, but having the knowledge of those basic scientific underpinnings and understanding that our rishis found this out 5,000 years before Western science got up, that's why I'm a Hindu today.
Correct. Thank you. Any other question from youths, please? Any youth says any, do you think this session would,
I want to just add on to one thing, as because I think, when we show you the stuff, if some of the stuff we showed you might have been very blatant and in your face, and I think most people would respond respond to that in a certain manner, and hopefully none of you will face something as obviously hateful. But I think what is to be watched out for is the more insidious ways, like Ruthwit just hinted at, right? Somebody will come and be friendly with you. They'll invite you to a potluck. There'll be like a fun party going on. If you are in a downtime, they'll come and be your support. And all of those are good. But watch out for people, and you want that kind of network, but watch out for people who do that with a hidden agenda. It's really hard for us as Hindus to realize this, because we don't see anybody behave like this. But there are groups in the world where they get brownie points, quote unquote, for getting others into the fold. It's a very hard concept to wrap our mind around. When I spoke to 3 young Black Americans last year, They had all converted to Hinduism, and they complained about this. They said, when we talk to Hindus, even in a temple, they are not very interested in explaining stuff to us. And that's a complete opposite from anybody in my church. If I just have a question, they will sign me up for 5 different things. And I said, yeah, that's a problem, but I don't know if we can really change it or if we want to change it, because fundamentally, we don't get any brownie points for bringing somebody into the fold while the others do. And so you're going to be faced with a very subtly working machine where folks are out to do it for, and they will do it with what they think are good intentions. They are not out to do something bad for you, but you just have to realize that in their desire to get brownie spiritual points for their faith, they are going to be working to disconnect you from your roots and your family. And in the modern environment where everyone has now realized the importance of indigenous traditions, I think that's one more reason for all of us to remember that we owe it to our ancestors to sort of continue this rich trove of traditions for future generations, so they also have the benefits that we have. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. As I said, it's already 10:05. Whoever is feeling late can leave. Like to hear any other youths, any feedback. Again, feedback for parents. As I said, that we don't know, we are not sure whether we know what we are doing. So can you give us tip? Was this presentation any helpful?
Yeah, I can say that though my kids are young, but I think some of the points I can explain to them. They are 8 and 10. But listening to Rutvej, listening to Shobha ji, listening to Pushpita ji and Gaurav ji, I actually gathered some points which I'm sure I can, think more about them, put some points together, and then I can, explain to them, because I can see my 10-year-old interested in knowing more or understanding deeply about Hinduism besides the traditions and the customs. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Like all the speakers, actually. Yeah.
Any last word from any of the youths wants to say anything?
I can, but I was just thinking this is a very interesting presentation, and as Aditi ji said, I think if you guys are available on upcoming Sundays, maybe even coming to some of the advanced Bal Vihar classes, their cultural classes, and I think really explaining this would honestly be very helpful. Personally, I'm in one of the advanced classes, and we actually did have somebody a few years ago who would come in and every Sunday, and he'd explain more of these like in-depth concepts about Hinduism, and also like kind of like the falsehoods people hold. He talked about like the swastik. He talked about why we pray to multiple gods, and how like not theoretically, how it basically just comes down to we do worship one god, Brahm, who like takes forms in different other gods. But it was very interesting to learn about that when I was like a few years younger, and even now it's very interesting to hear. So if you guys would be interested in coming and I think talking to us about it, I think everybody would really learn a lot, and it'd be very interesting to learn.
Anjali,
Great
definitely.
point. We will definitely arrange something.
Anjali, and I'll add one thing, just anyone here who has any questions, I put my email and I put my phone number in the chat, whether it be Hinduism, the college admission process, just navigating life as a young person. Feel free to send me a message and we can always discuss a bit more.
Any last word from anyone?
I would like to add one thing, Dilipji. This is a wonderful forum that you have put together. Thank you very much. I would like the youth to understand that one part of it is the conversion and what Rutvej and Pushpita ji mentioned. But for your young minds, it's hard to understand. There are a lot of other what are called socio-political, economic reasons behind why they want to pretty much get us away from being a Hindu, to put it very simply. So there's a lot of bigger ideas and bigger reasons behind why some people are doing these kind of things. So it's good to now understand that, because like I said in my piece, that they may look exactly like that. They may not be Catholics, they may not be, they may look exactly like us, they may have Hindu names even. So be watchful and be wary, when things don't sit, ask questions. Like reach out to someone like Ruthvi ji or Aditi ji or Dilip ji and ask these questions. Find out for yourself. Be grounded in the facts and not in the fiction that they are feeding you in terms of genocides, that we Hindus are committing genocide on our own people. This is the narrative. So find out the truth. Visit India. When you go to India with your parents, ask your parents to take you to places. Ask people there, is there a genocide going on? Are Hindu people killing other Hindu people? These kind of questions, bring it up. So you will gain a better understanding by asking questions. So when in doubt, ask questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And this was wonderful session you have put together, Dilip and Aditi ji.
No, I think it's a great, I trust all of you youths. I know you will do just fine. As I said, that if you be proud of whoever you are, you will succeed in life. If you always, others will always put doubts in your mind that you have some problems, then, there is no end to it. And then you will not be you, you will be some. So I know you will do great. Again, this message is coming from Equality Lab, will call it saffron uncles and aunties. So they will say that we brainwash you, we taught you everything wrong. They will tell you right, but you are smart enough and you decide. So I think with that, thank you very much, everyone.
I think Kushi wanted to say something.
Sure, please. Please.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I appreciate this because a lot of people have tried to explain some things to me and I don't really understand, but this I really understood. So I really appreciate it. And if you could come to Balvihar culture classes some on Sundays, we'd really appreciate it.
Oh, so nice, Kosi, to hear like that from you. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. We will do it. Yeah. Anybody else? Any youths have last question? Otherwise, we'll add. Youths?
I just want to say thank you too, because we really appreciate it. If possible, could you come to Balvihar?
Okay, we'll do it. Thank you, Vishnu. Any youths? Otherwise, we'll end it. Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.